The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 28. The Bathhouse of the Spirits. When I emerged from the mists, I thought at first that they had led me to the wrong domain. I stood on a bare mountain, ravaged by loggers and miners, with no bathhouse in sight. Hearing the sound of running water in the distance, I proceeded toward it in the hopes that the bathhouse would be there. The sound led me to what looked like a ghost town, although, given the lack of houses, perhaps ghost marketplace is a more accurate term. Empty shops and restaurants lined the streets, which eldritch sight reveals to have heavy auras of enchantment. Across the bridge stood an enormous structure that must have been the bathhouse, but it looked as though it had been abandoned for years. As the sun set, a bouquet of mouth-watering aromas drifted from the food stalls. Between the enchantment magic and the cold radiating from my ring of protection, I knew my sudden hunger was not merely the natural temptation of a delicious meal, and I hurried across the bridge toward a bathhouse that now bustled with activity and glowed with the light from hundreds of lanterns. Although I cast invisibility in order to cross the bridge unmolested, some of the spirits still saw me and began to shout that a human had invaded their realm. I carried on. I knew from my patron's advice and my own research that I had only one hope of staying in the bathhouse without being transformed into the evening's meal, and that she was inside, counting the gold she had collected from centuries of customers.
Welcome to Wonderful World of Darklords. I'm Tom.
I'm Rachel.
And we're discussing how to convert Disney movies to Ravenloft domains of dread, except when you decide we're not.
Along the way, we'll look at the Dark Lord, the domain itself, and some plot hooks and adaptation ideas to integrate this setting into your own campaign.
Today's episode, Spirited Away.
But that's not a Disney movie!
It's not at all.
And it's not April!
Unless you're one of those people that thinks every animated movie is a Disney movie. In which case, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah.
This is less confusing for you. Yes, happy Thanksgiving in the spirit of thankfulness for our listeners, and also because our schedule is really tight, we had a lot of bonus stuff. Also, like, conveniently, the spirit of thankfulness coincided in what was easiest for us to do.
Yes.
We are going to be doing for our November episode our Spirited Away, which was, of course, if you are a regular, if not, welcome, but if you are a regular, that was our Listener's Choice poll winner.
Yes.
This past spring, we did a Listener's Choice Awards. Our Discord proposed some stuff they'd like us to cover, and then we put a general poll out on social media, and Spirited Away won.
Yeah. And we were originally going to do Spirited Away as a bonus episode in addition to all of our fall episodes. But we had the Strixhaven Book Club of Dread bonus episode in September. We had the Bald Mountain bonus episode in October. We've had a lot of bonus episodes this fall. So, you know what?
Thanksgiving.
We're thankful for our listeners, so it's our November episode.
And indeed, a tradition is a practice that you do again.
Yes.
So we're thinking this is going to be our tradition going forward. We had a lot of fun with the Listener's Choice thing. So, stay tuned to this space. In April, we will put another poll. We'll do the same thing. We'll poll the Discord, let them choose the nominees, we'll do another poll, and probably going forward, that's how we'll try and make it work. April will be the Listener's Choice voting, and then November will be we'll shoot to have that be the episode.
So if you want to be part of the nomination process, then go on Patreon and enter the Discord. Everyone can be part of the voting process.
Yes. Yeah. It's just like real politics. You just have to, everyone gets to vote, but you have to pay to be part of the nomination process. So we
are an oligarchy here.
Indeed.
In Wonderful World of Darklords.
What are some of our nominees again that we had? I know we had Pokemon, the first movie.
Delicious in a Dungeon.
Mad Max.
Fury
Road specifically was real up there. That was second place, I think.
Yeah. I remember after the things were chosen, everyone was like, why didn't we pick Labyrinth?
Yeah,
Labyrinth was a...
So if any of those sound good to you, and you're like, I really want to get the Kohlers to do a Ravenloft domain of one or more of those things, I want it so bad, I'd pay money for that privilege. I have great news for you. Yes, so just keep your eyes on this space, and in April, we will have that next poll up for our next November Listener's Choice episode. But first, before we get too lost in plans and traditions, we have to do that first thing that establishes the tradition.
Yes. Instead of thinking ahead to our future episodes, we've got to work on our current episode. Which we were so happy when Spirited Away. We were like, they suggested Spirited Away, and we were both like, gosh, I hope this wins, because we're gonna do it. So this way we don't have to do that and another thing. We want this to win so badly, but we are a pure democracy, so this was legitimately the victor. I hope we can live up to the coolness.
Yeah, that is the one thing. It's been intimidating to see
my gosh, yes.
the greatest animated movies ever made to our little dork version of it. Our little dork fanfic.
Yeah.
So, Miyazaki, if you're listening to this, we really like your movie.
Yeah.
Please hit us up on socials. 80-something-year-old reclusive Japanese.
It's clearly on social media and listening to American podcasts. About Dungeons and Dragons.
About Dungeons and Dragons and Disney movies. But yes. So we would love doing this. And the great thing is, it's not just that it's an amazing movie. Like, yeah, they're pretty much all amazing, right? Like, your Ghiblis, your Miyazakis, they're all great. Mm-hmm. But it's that this is one of those that has this, like, super strong central villain. Yeah. That fits a lot of our criteria for what makes a good Dark Lord. So we're like, yeah, of all the Miyazakis, other than Princess Mononoke,
which we already did,
this is one of the ones that's, like, easiest for us because of that. And let's talk about that strong central villain in a section we like to call
The Lord. The Lord. A hag-like archfey named Yubaba has been the proprietor of the bathhouse for time out of mind, which, given that it services the Fae, must be a very long time indeed. Yubaba's obsession with gold made me suspect at first that she was some sort of incarnation of avarice, a theory that was bolstered by the grasping nature of her employees. However, the way she spoke of human greed and the attitude that she showed towards certain patrons led me to believe that there was more to her than I had initially ascertained. A spirit of avarice might feel contemptuous superiority toward the covetous humans who fell into her hands, but when Yubaba spoke of the pigs in her pens who had once been human, she positively radiated wrath and disgust. What's more, when the bathhouse employees had the opportunity to heal a spirit who had been injured by human rapacity, Yubaba would demand that we do so before we had any evidence that the spirit could pay for the service. I eventually learned that she did expect compensation, but this was the only instance in which she allowed the customers to pay on credit. I believe that Yubaba's greed was a response to that of humans, an adaptation that she feels will allow her to survive in a heartless and mercenary world. My patron had given me precise instructions on how to remain in the bathhouse with my identity intact. A pleasant change from Westview, to be sure, although I would like to remind him, for the record, that this marks the second time that I have put myself in the absolute power of a witch at his request. After making my way to her luxurious quarters through a combination of magic and stealth, I asked Yubaba to give me a job in the bathhouse, a request that she is unable to refuse. Although she blustered and subjected me to various magical abuses in her attempts to intimidate me, I held firm, and she at last relented and allowed that I could remain at the bathhouse as a drudge. If I signed away my name. It is well that my patron warned me that this would be her condition, and of how I could circumvent it. Otherwise I would have left the bathhouse on the spot, even at the risk of losing this commission. As it was, it took all my mettle to sign my name to her contract. Yubaba studied the ink. Danielle Dunning. Well, your family name puts far too much of a hold on you for any part of that to stay. With a gesture, my surname vanished into the palm of her hand. I did not even realize until later that all my memories of my family went along with it, for they were gone so quickly that I could not notice their absence. And someone else has a lien on that D. Another wave, and the first letter of my given name was gone, followed by the next 3 letters, and all memories of my patron, my task, and my life outside the bathhouse. Your name is L. Go to the employees' quarters and get to work. I obeyed at once. For what other purpose did I have?
So, our Dark Lord for this Ravenloft setting is going to be Yubaba, or as we're going to call her in the write-up, this is you, this is brilliant.
Yes, thank you.
This is all you.
Baba Yuba.
Baba Yuba. Yeah, baby, you can't see that. Hear that, Miyazaki? Yeah. I know you're listening and you can't touch us. We're untouchable. But, yeah, so in the write-up, Baba Yuba, but Yubaba. And as we said, it is this villain who not only is a good villain and is a central villain, but is a villain that has a lot of the qualities that we think make a good Dark Lord. And let's talk about some of those qualities. Rachel, what is a Dark Lord?
Well, a Dark Lord is an evil being who commits some kind of act of ultimate darkness that causes the dark powers to say, why, hello, new friend, we want to play with you forever. And so they pluck that evil being up and they place them in a domain which is a special hell tailor-made just for them. There are some really great Dark Lords. There are some really not so great Dark Lords. So we are going to talk about the qualities that separate the Strahd von Zaroviches from the original three hags in Tempest. It's kind of our best.
What an appropriate example.
the four qualities that kind of separate them. The first quality is that act of ultimate darkness. They do a specific evil thing. They're not just kind of evil by attrition. In Strahd's case, it was that he killed his brother because he wanted to get with his brother's fiancée. The second element is the torment, or because we're a Disney podcast, they got what they wanted, they lost what they had. In Strahd's case, it's congratulations, yes, your brother is out of the way, and you have eternal youth, so you're not too old for Tatiana, but you're too Strahd for Tatiana, and you always will be. Our third element is an element of tragedy or relatability. They're not just evil for the sake of being evil, they're not just kind of hags who are being hags, just doing what hags do.
They're hags.
But these hags
What do you want?
These hags are extra hag-like, so they're like, yeah, they're like just super duper hag-like and becoming Dark Lords.
What
like,
if hag, but more?
Yeah, like Lorinda did a thing. Like the original three hags in Tempest are like, they're hags doing like, hag stuff.
People have complained about some of the shifts into 5e Ravenloft. Mm-hmm. Sometimes for very good reasons, sometimes for not good reasons. Sometimes for just a little bit of grognardism, like, this isn't hashtag not my Darkon or whatever. Mm-hmm. But, like, I have never seen a single person be like, bring back the three hags! Like, how could you do... I could even see that we want to prefer the dark fairy tale vibe.
Yeah, that's
right?
kind of the run into bring back the dark fairy tale vibe and have there be three of them.
Right, just
you gotta
for
have
the
a
sake
coven
of the,
and have
like,
it be three. But because they did not have that element of tragedy and relatability. Mm-hmm. They were hags hanging around. As opposed to Strahd, who has that element of tragedy and relatability, which is that unrequited love really sucks. And then the fourth element of a good Dark Lord is that the domain reflects the Dark Lord into their curse in some way. Strahd is the Dark Lord of Barovia, which is spooky gothic vampire land. He is not the Dark Lord of dark fairy tale land, or a bathhouse for the spirits.
Or a dark fairy tale bathhouse of the spirits.
And also, the domain Barovia is a boring mud slump because it reflects that curse of being lonely, of not having Tatiana, because all of the people there are boring, so there's not any kind of equal that he could find even if he wanted to, and he's just going to be bored and lonely forever.
So, applying those four qualities to Yubaba, the hardest for us... our act of ultimate darkness, because that is the origin story. Mm-hmm. And part of the fun of this movie, part of the richness of the storytelling, is how kind of in media res Sun is coming into the world.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole story. What's going on with the baby? What's going on with her sister? Like, at some point, she made a promise to employ anyone that asked for a job. And it's that wonderful dream or, like, fairy tale, like, no, you're just in this world that has this whole crazy, like, history and structure and economy. And you're just kind of fumbling around, bumping into it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of what's going on with the baby, by the way, we have no idea. We're sorry.
We're not doing the baby.
We didn't know what to do with the baby. Just
hit us up on socials if you like.
Absolutely.
Have say or Discord. Like, if you guys are like, we know exactly how to make the baby part of the story, hit us up, because we're both drawing blanks, and we've been trying. Mm-hmm. But with our purposes to have a Dark Lord, you do have to have that origin story.
Yes.
So this is kind of a lot of the other stuff you can just slot Yubaba in as is. Mm-hmm. Like, once Yubaba is a Dark Lord, the rest of it all kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
But this is where we really had to come up with a whole backstory. Mm-hmm. And Rachel, I remember this was your mostly idea.
Thank you.
So if you want to fire away.
Sure, yeah. So the big thing, I was looking into some stuff about Yubaba and about, like, kind of the Japanese folklore aspects, because that's, not an area where our very European butts are, like, experts. And I was wondering if she was kind of riffing on a specific character, the way that, we might see some Baba Yaga in her or something like that.
Right, the name implies.
Mm-hmm. And there wasn't anything like that, but there was a thing about there being imagery associated with a mountain spirit called a Yama-uba.
Which the name implies.
Yeah, the name implies, Yama-uba, sounds like Yubaba. And there was also a thing about Yama-ubas having babies and stuff, so that was, a thing with, yeah.
And maybe, it's like with this movie, you watch it and you're like, whoa, what a, crazy world this is. And, I'm sure a lot of this is just crazy for everyone. But, if I were Japanese, it would be, a little less crazy. A lot of this stuff would just, make more sense. So maybe that's why the baby is so confusing. It's of course, a baby.
Of course, a baby. Yama-ubas have babies.
That's what they do.
Yeah. So it's looking into Yama-ubas, and then apparently a thing with them is, appearing to miners and loggers in the mountains and chasing them away and, kind of protecting the sanctity of their mountains. So we're like, okay, this is a thing.
Yeah, that's something.
We can work with this. And so we're imagining that Yubaba was this mountain spirit, and there were all of these miners that were coming because she was a mountain that was rich in gold. And so these miners were coming, and they were mining all of the gold out of this mountain, and she was trying to run them off, but, whenever she would try to run them off, they would just keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And all of this gold that was a part of her, that was, but basically, it was like they were performing an amputation on her, almost. They were just, taking these physical pieces of her and carting them away. And so eventually they mined out as much as they could, and this whole time she's getting weaker because more and more of her's getting taken away, and she's just kind of this just exhausted, empty mountain riddled with all of these empty mines with, that have just been plundered for all the gold that they can have. And then sometime later, her mountain had this natural hot springs in it. And she saw that people were coming and building a bathhouse in this hot springs. And she saw that people were coming to the bathhouse, and they were paying to get into the bathhouse. And what were they using to pay into the bathhouse? They were using gold. And there was a level on which she, saw this happening. And she's like, this gold is a part of me. This gold belongs to me. This gold is something that I need to have back. There's kind of this longing for gold, but she couldn't even quite remember why she was longing for gold. And she was just like, I guess this is how you get gold, is through commerce. So, okay, cool, let's go for it.
Through bathhouse commerce?
When I was explaining this idea to Tom, he said, okay, so it's like Princess Mononoke, but if the spirits, instead of fighting Lady Eboshi, they were like, okay, how can we get a better Iron Empire going?
Yes. How can we compete with her, undercut her in the market?
Yeah, let's profit on this. So, Yubaba awoke her longing for gold, for this piece of herself. The Dark Powers were like, oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy.
We can do something with this.
I know a sucker when I see one.
So, they offered her a deal. She signed away her name.
Yeah, baby. That was me.
That was Tom. Yep, that was Tom. She signed away her name, and in exchange, her mountain was transformed into a bathhouse for the spirits, which, here's going to be the Feywilds, because, clearly. And all of those lesser spirits that she was supposed to protect, all of the tree spirits on the mountain, all the animal spirits on the mountain, all of those guys, they're her employees.
Yeah.
She doesn't have this protector relationship with them she kind of does, and the way that an employer will protect their employees.
That kind of twisted version of this now.
And that's even kind of where that offering a job to anyone who asks for it comes in, because that's where she's like, no, I'm going to take care of them. Yeah. Anyone on my mountain who comes and asks me for a job, I'll give it to them. Anyone who asks me for a job, I'll give it to them.
I'm a job creator.
And then she's also tending to attract other lost souls like Haku that find their way there and get a new life and a new identity. And a big part of why we went with this was it's the gold, it's her greed.
Yeah.
And it's also playing into those environmental themes.
Yeah. This is all us. This is all speculative. It's not like this is anywhere in the movie or any of the making of stuff we could find.
We had to do something.
We had to do something. In the movie, it's like, she's a witch. What do you want?
Yeah.
But that doesn't work for our purposes.
No.
So, but as
Once
Rachel
again, that's the three hacks.
As Rachel was saying, we tried to at least build an origin that hit on a lot of the themes and imagery of the story. So I remember you said a specific, like, moment rewatching the movie that, like, hit this for you was, like, they call her about something, the employees, and she's just sort of sitting in her lavish office, like, counting her gold.
Yeah.
Just kind of, like, running it through her fingers. And that sort of image of greed, and greed is such a huge theme of this story, of this movie, and that kind of trying to bring up that idea of greed, and even, you know, with No Face, and this idea of, no, this is filling a hole that can't be filled.
Yeah, yeah.
In this stuff for our Hadestown episode. You should listen to it, it's great. The writer has this line about, like, fundamentally, like, greed, and is the trying to fill a hole that can't be filled with money. And that's what she's trying to do, is she's trying to get gold to fill a hole in her heart.
Yeah.
That began with gold, but that cannot, like, only a restoration of her mountain could really give her peace.
Yeah, it's kind of our job is to figure out what hole she's trying to fill with the gold. It's like, oh, what if it's a physical hole? It's
right.
mine. Like,
and as you mentioned, that touches in on a lot of the environmental themes.
Yeah.
And even, like, we're going to keep coming, it's so useful for our purposes, we're going to keep coming back to this stuff with the stink spirit.
Yes.
That, like, we're taking that, and the whole, like, you were this one spirit, and then environmental destruction changed you into something else. So we're also taking from that.
Or even with Haku, that, like,
Yes.
now, he has his name, but he can't go home again because his home is gone.
Also, this is a good time to bring in what we're doing with Zeniba. And that is, there's a line, like, the interesting, the twins, and there's a line that we saw the stage play version, and I don't remember if it's the animated version.
I think the stage play used the subtitle translation. We
Right.
watched the dub.
Right.
Yeah, I was reading some stuff about the sub versus the dub, and they were saying, these lines are the sub and not the dub. I thought, oh, those were on the stage play. Okay.
Right, yeah. And it has the line where she says, my sister and I are one person split down the middle. And, like, come on, it's we gotta have, like, some kind, it can't just be sisters who don't, like, get along, right?
Like, we were originally thinking, well, maybe they're, like, twin peaks, as it were. But, like, no, that line is too, no.
My sister and I are one person split down the middle. So we are imagining that sort of Zeniba is her old self.
Yeah.
Is the kind of shadow of her old self. Her old identity is the mountain spirit that has been excised from her by her signing this contract. Well, to break the contract, signing over the name. That was like trying to connect it.
Like, maybe even Zenibaba was her true name.
Was her real name.
And, now it's gone.
And we will get back to Zenibaba later, but basically that's also part of this origin story. This parallel adversary is created when she signs over her name, and that then even gives you that sort of psychology if you have sort of the two parts of yourself at war.
Yeah.
So that's a long wind up for that act of Ultimate Darkness. That Ultimate Darkness to TLDR. It was she signed over her name to the dark powers and turned all the spirits she's supposed to protect into her employees. Now we get the torment, which we have already touched on a lot.
Yeah.
I've covered a lot of this, actually. The torment is she's using money to fill a hole money can't fill. That she has this deep psychic wound. She's trying to fill it with money, and she can't. And, of course, the dark, beautiful irony that just makes the dark powers drool in anticipation is that in doing this, she is spreading greed and causing more damage. Like, in her attempt to fill the psychic wound inside of her, she is psychically wounding everybody around her.
Or even that she's drifting farther away from her true purpose.
Yeah.
That, like, in trying to fill the psychic wound, she's more and more being Yubaba, the bathhouse boss, and not, say, Zenibaba, if that was her original name, the mountain spirit.
And that connects it with Zenibaba, like, part of why that might be this other person is to be part of the torment.
Yeah.
That maybe, like, the dark powers want her to have this kind of shadow self to be a torment of the thing she has lost that is out of reach.
Yeah.
So we even have this idea that she's sending Haku to try and steal the gold seal. We're imagining that's like just the latest in a very long line of she's always sending spies or thieves. She's always trying to, like, take something from her sister that she thinks will make her whole.
Yeah.
That, like, she thinks, oh, if I could get her gold seal, and what's the gold seal? It's a stamp with her name on it. That if I could get this physical thing, this possession of my sister's that I want, then that hole inside my heart will be filled. And it never will.
And it's like, maybe even she truly believes that Zenibaba stole something from her that is rightfully hers, that she's trying to get back. Like, maybe by this point she's convinced herself of that. But, no, she signed it away.
Yep. And this also, like, well, you're probably like, oh man, wow, that sucks. And that very organically segues into our element of tragedy and relatability.
Yeah, which once again, we kind of had to come up with that, because there is nothing tragic or relatable. Well, I mean, a little bit relatable, I guess, because money's great. We all
want money, and as parents, we all have children that we want to not wake up. So... that we want to go to sleep because we're trying to work.
Yes. But we would be absolutely devastated if it turned out that the reason they were being so quiet while we were trying to work was because they had been replaced.
3 green heads.
3 green heads, yeah. Having me just last week.
So, we touched on, we tried to bring in a lot of the tragedy that you get with some of the spirits, like the stink spirit or Haku. Like, there is real... Like, Haku is an incredibly tragic figure. Yeah. And so we sort of tried to find a way to bring that tragedy, that sort of environmentalist tragedy, into Baba Yuba, our analog.
Yes.
Similar to, but legally distinct from.
Yes.
Yubaba.
And then another kind of element of tragedy or relatability that was coming out with this is that she's trying to reclaim power using the tools and methods of the people who took it from her. That, like, she's had this power, like, violently, forcibly taken away from her, and that she's trying to use these tools of capitalism, to try and reclaim that power. Yeah, this is... You can imagine some analogs that we're not going to talk about because we're a PG-rated, family-friendly podcast, but there are plenty of very dark, real-world analogs to this, of using the tools of your oppressors, of using the people who've hurt you. Even look at Killmonger for a more approachable... Not as dark version of that.
PG-13.
Not R. Just in the woundedness of being exploited herself, she's exploiting others.
And that segs into that whole idea of the domain reflecting the Dark Lord's personality or curse, that we're having to make it kind of worse. Like, we're kind of having the bathhouse be a worst version.
Yeah. I mean, it's Ravenloft. If you really love how gentle this is, because it's a Miyazaki movie, sorry, this is a Ravenloft domain. We love how gentle it is, too, but it's a Ravenloft domain.
We're going to give you some stuff you could still use to run your own version of this, but... So keep listening and read the write-up on DM's Go.
Yes.
But this is a horror setting. We are taking this and reimagining it as a D&D horror setting.
Yeah.
So it has to be sort of the worst version.
Yeah.
And once again, we're not like, what if the bathhouse pipes were human blood or like was powered by burning skulls? Like, no, this is all there, especially in the early days when Chihiro is first there as Sen and is first like everything is terrible and everyone's mean to her. We're just taking a lot of that and a lot of the stuff with No Face as well.
Yeah.
And this idea that No Face is sort of bringing out the worst in the people and the bathhouse employees. But we're like, no, that's just the baseline. In our version, that's not bringing out the worst, and that's the baseline.
Or like the face that Lin shows to everybody except Chihiro and Kamaji. Well, if that was just her, So, yeah, that we're this worst version of the bathhouse. It is this, like, capitalist hellscape. It is... Everyone's greedy, everyone's doing a lot of politics, a lot of backbiting, a lot of betrayal. Everyone's kind of, they're the bucket of rats and all the rats are clawing over each other to try and get out of them, to get to rise up, to get out of the top of the bucket. And even the stuff with, like, you can get a little mini version of what we're thinking with the stuff with Sen trying to get the, like, bathhouse token. To clean the big tub. Yeah.
And you totally get this like little, martinet who just lords it over everyone. And this is like the one like scrap of power he has is he's the one that gives out the bath tokens. And he is just insufferable about it.
Yes.
And he will absolutely just be the worst kind of coworker of if you do not kiss his butt, then he will like come up with these little ways to make your life to inconvenience you and make your job harder.
But does his butt keep getting bigger?
So there's more of it to kiss. So that being like, that's everything. That's just everybody's scheming, everybody's backbiting, everybody's just clawing over each other to try and get us a roasted newt.
Yes, no one will do anyone a favor unless there's a roasted newt in for them.
Yeah. Or like a tip. Like if there's all this cutthroat manipulation and backbiting over tips and over trying to like be the ones that service the high tipping customers.
Yeah. There was this is a bit of a tangent, so if this goes long, then it's probably going to get cut. But going back to referencing The Shining, like last month, there was a bit in The Shining with Dick Halloran, the cook who had the shine, mentioned that there was this like girl who worked at the Overlook who had a little bit of a shine, and it was just enough that she could always identify who the high-tipping customers were going to be, so she would always make sure that she was put on them, and then she'd always gloat about it afterwards, just like it's a whole bathhouse full of her.
Yeah. And so this this sort of greed and covetousness and gluttony. You know, nobody just eats. You're shoveling food down your mouth. Like, it's just that graspingness that is the heart of Yubaba radiates out from her and infects everyone.
I mean, even infects Chihiro's parents. When
Exactly. And so, Chihiro makes her wisdom save.
Yes. Her parents wouldn't normally just be sitting down shoving food into their faces.
Yeah. No, it's fine. They have American Express. They have credit cards and cash. And there's an even bigger thing that we're imagining, and it's that wonderful fairy tale logic of to work there, you have to sign your name away.
Yes.
And that when you forget your name, the corruption gets worse. Like, the longer you forget your name, the lower your wisdom save. It's like the higher the DC of your wisdom save. And that works in our fiction, in the story, because we can say, because she has Haku to help her, and because she has this card with her name written on it she didn't reveal, she kind of still has access to her real name, so that gives her advantage.
Yeah,
she has advantage on the wisdom saves.
She's the only one who's not currying favor with No Face, because she's like, no, I'm able to think about things other than
exactly. I'm like, wait, this guy's like giant and eating people. Like, maybe
something's not right here.
Something's not right here. We have higher priorities than a tip. A lot of red flags in this customer. You guys can have him. So we'll talk more about this whole sort of greed aura. We have some mechanics for it and stuff. And we'll talk more about that later when we talk more about the bathhouse. But first, we're on Yubaba.
Yes, gotta be laser focused. This is the problem with the Domain Reflects the Darklord section.
Yeah, it's easy to start just doing the domain. Yeah. So in terms of Yubaba, to focus back on her, let's look at her character sheet. Can't get more focused than that.
Yes.
So we are imagining in the Van Rieten's Guide style, she has stats similar to a night hag with a modified version of the soul jar feature.
So yeah, I don't know all these 5e versions of everybody. So you tell why you picked the night hag.
This is sort of my thought process, right? Like, number one has to be a hag. Right? Like, that's non-negotiable. Yeah. It has to be some variant of a hag. So I went and checked all the hag variants I could find. And a lot of them are more of your classic, like, nature witch kind of archetype. So you've got the ones that are like the ice and winter and all that. And you've got the ones that are like swamp and decay. And night hags, the idea is they're supposed to be, they like are dream creatures. So they're night hags specifically.
That works great for Spirited Away, just right off the bat.
Right, yeah. So you already have this sort of being in kind of the Feywild dream world, that they're kind of in the border ethereal, and they give you nightmares. And the big reason I chose them is just sort of process of elimination. Like, they have the most versatile spell list. Like, everybody, the other hags are much more like their specific nature terrain themed.
Right.
So, like, your Annis hags, I think it is, are like a lot of cold and ice and wind and stuff, because they're sort of the icy mountains. Whereas night hags is like a pretty generic spell list. Like, they have, they're the hags with magic missile.
Right.
And, like, we basically see Yubaba cast magic missile. Like, she's not a nature lady. She has a more generic spell list. So, like, Night Hag works best. And then they have this thing where, like, they can give you nightmares, and you have to make, con saves. And if you get a certain amount of exhaustion, you die. And if you die of the exhaustion, they actually get to take your soul and put it in their soul jar. So this is great. I like Night Hags a lot because they're like a story. Like, of all the hags, I think they have the most built-in, like, 3-act structure. Right. Like, story. Also, this is if you want to do Freddy, just a lot of people say it's actually super easy to do Freddy if you just do a Night Hag. And so, obviously, like, nightmares aren't a thing. But we will probably, by the time we do the write-up, I'll try and come up with a version of the soul jar ability where it's taking your name.
Right, yeah.
So even, like, you could kind of squint and tilt your head sideways and look at the magic eye of the night hag. And if you relax your eyes just right, it forms into Yubaba. So that was the best I could do.
I'll never be able to do it. Oh no, I could never do those.
Is everybody gaslighting me? There's no sailboat, it's just static.
I discovered that...
Ask your parents, kids.
Yes. I discovered that actually apparently those things are basically astigmatism simulators. So my eyes were like, why are you trying to make me do this thing? We work so hard for me to not do this thing. I won't do it.
And speaking of the name thing, in terms of the special powers, like, that's obviously a huge thing. Oh, it's so good. It's one of my favorite, like, fairy tale lodge moments.
Yes.
Is you sign away your name, she takes your name, you forget, and it's even like, we have the great book with the car, she's like, oh, Chihiro, my name's Chihiro. It's not like you remember internally. It's just like you're told, and you're like, well, I guess that's true. It's like when someone tells you about, like, a thing you did when you were 4.
Yeah.
And you're like, I guess I did that. Sure. And we're imagining mechanically, you have a disadvantage on any saves against her, right? Like, any saves. Any wisdom saves, any saves to not be frightened by her. Even the whole she keeps threatening to turn Sun into a coal. And you're like, no, you're not going to, like, get much of a con save. Like,
yeah.
You're
that polymorph is just coming for you.
And eventually, you forget your old life. You not only forget your name, you forget your whole old life, and you just kind of become this permanent cog in the machine. And once again, kind of like leaning into this sort of bathhouse's capitalist hellscape.
Yes.
You totally get, and Hades, leading into Hades Town, you totally get that, like, you work and your whole world is this job and this, like, backbiting politics and this, like, scrambling for advantage over all of your coworkers. And that's all your brain has space for. And eventually that's just the whole world.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I guess I came here from somewhere. I guess I had parents.
Yeah.
Because, logically, it makes sense I would have had parents. But, like, there's so little of your brain left for anything but the world of the bathhouse.
Yeah.
And even with having something to hold on to, the hope of escape. Like, remembering there's a world beyond the bathhouse. So we're imagining that's the thing with Lynn. That, like, in the, once again, I can't remember if she does this in the animated, but in the stage musical.
She does, yeah.
Okay, yeah. She's like, look, someday I'm going to get train tickets and I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to go to that town and I'm going to leave this place behind me. And then she's kind of able to hold on to more of her humanity because she's holding on to, like, no, there is a world outside the bathhouse.
Yeah.
Or we're going to come back to Kamanji, even, like, he has the train tickets. And the whole, like, maybe even just having that physical token of knowing I can leave. I can escape.
This isn't forever.
This isn't my world.
I'm not stuck in this horrible job until the day I die.
Yeah, like, that's enough to let him hold on to more of his humanity and his compassion and his empathy and things like that. And then this was all you.
Yes, it was. So, once you've signed away your name, and you've lost your name, and you're on your way to becoming a cog in the machine, if you do try to escape, if you're Lynn and if you say, you know what, the thing I'm holding on to is escaping, but I'm never going to be able to save up enough money for tickets, so I'm going to escape anyway. I'm just going to run away. Well, you don't have your name anymore, and the only thing that you had left was your role in the bathhouse, your job, your role as a cog in the machine. You've lost that too. You've lost everything. You are going to start just fading away because there is literally nothing left of you. And so you become a no-face. And the reason why we...
Air horn!
We'll talk about this more when we talk about the land. But the reason why we kind of, like, we're going in that direction, the reason why I thought of that was because Miyazaki said in an interview when he was talking about No-Face, because again, I was looking up No-Face to see if he was based on a specific spirit from mythology, and he wasn't. But it's kind of the idea of that person who doesn't really have a sense of their own identity, and so they're looking for external validation constantly.
Right, yeah.
So kind of basically he's just latched onto Sen, and he's like, no, I need external validation from Sen. That's what I'm gonna get. And so that this is kind of like that ultimate loss of identity. You don't have a name, you don't have a role. All you can do is drift along and hope that you find somebody who you think maybe they can tell me who I'm supposed to be and grow onto them. And again, we'll talk more about what that process looks like when we get to the land.
So the great thing is that's a lot of power she has. She can really ruin your day.
Yeah.
But the great thing is, like, maybe this is part of her curse, from the dark powers. Maybe it's just the nature of the Feywild. That you have these rules. And that anyone that breaks the rules, like eating the food without permission, gets disadvantage against, like, being polymorphed into pigs. But she's as much bound by these rules.
Yes.
Like, she is as limited and as bound by the rules, and that is classic fairy tale. Like, that is, like, if you're like, I want to do a dark fairy tale setting, I feel like one of the things I'm going to look for is, do you have that as part of the thing?
Yes.
Like, there are rules, and everyone, no matter how powerful or evil or malicious, is bound by those rules as much as anyone else.
Yes, and they can twist the rules,
Yes.
and they can bend the rules, but they cannot break the rules.
So, for the example we have, the whole, she made at some point, she said she'd give anyone that asked a job, so Sen comes there, and she tries to scare her away. She can try and scare you away, she can threaten you, she can, like, magically seal your mouth shut. But if you just keep saying, I want a job, eventually, if she cannot get you to give up asking, she has to give you a job.
Yeah.
And we even have the whole with No Face, that, like, he's able to get into the bathhouse, and you get the whole, he's just kind of hovering around the edges, but then Sen invites him in.
Yeah.
Like, Sen opens the door and says, I'm going to leave this open for you. And now he can come in the bathhouse. Like, he can go against her defenses because that's the rules.
Because now he's a guest.
He's a guest.
He's been invited in by an employee. So.
Or even with the Stink Spirit, you have the whole, she has the employees, like, lining the bridge going, we're closed, no. But he just keeps coming, and they don't, like, push him off the bridge or anything. And then he pays them money.
Yeah.
He reaches out, and Sen takes the nice man's money. He pays them money, so now he is a guest, and they can't just, like, Yubaba isn't just blasting him with fireballs to get him to live. Like, no, we are just stuck with, we have to service this guy because he is a guest, and that is the rules of this bathhouse.
Yes.
So, also, that in general, the great thing is with that kind of night hag, there's the night hag spell list, but you get that she's a very, very, very powerful, very knowledgeable witch. We know the whole Haku came to be her apprentice, so you're justified giving her, like, whatever spells you want.
Yeah.
And whatever, like, ritual spells you want to. She could do ritual spells.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And then, finally, the power that all Dark Lords have, except for some of the ones we've come up with, and a couple of the original canon examples.
OG Vlad Drakov, yeah.
Is the closing the borders, which is the plot device power of why don't they just leave? Why doesn't Sen just leave?
Because there was a giant lake, ocean thing, and she couldn't swim across it. She ran to the edge, but there was an ocean there.
I love it when we're, like, watching one of these movies to, like, prep, and we're like, oh, look, they're closing the borders.
Maleficent just made Thor's come up.
Just closed the borders. Elsa just closed the borders. Here we have, there's this, the mountain, right? The bathhouse is built near the mountain, and normally it's connected to these, like, other lands, but she can make an ocean around it. But once again, because we seem to love doing this, like, I wasn't conscious that I loved doing this, but here we are, we keep doing this.
And part of it is because in these movies, there's always an escape clause. Yeah. So we're like, I don't think it's even so much that we love doing it, is that, like...
It fits the fiction.
Right. Yeah.
But escape clause, as Rachel mentioned, that, no, it's bound by the rules, so she cannot totally close the borders. She can't stop the tram. Like, there's a tram, and it has a stop by the bathhouse, and if you have tickets, you can leave. And she just has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, she cannot stop you magically from leaving if you have tram tickets.
Yeah. It's like most of these movies don't end with them killing the villain.
Right, yes, and then leaving.
So, like...
Frozen would have been very different. Duke Wesselton had been the hero.
So it's like, if we're gonna keep with the fiction.
Yeah, that's good. It makes me feel better about myself. I'm like, I wasn't aware that I loved, punking Dark Lords, but here we are. Also, I would say another example of this is we have, like, the big but pleasure barge bringing all the guests. I can even see a thing of, like, she can't really close it against guests.
Yeah, she can't, like, completely close it.
Yeah.
Maybe even we could have it be the thing, because, like, she wants it to be open from the outside. So it's like she puts this giant ocean there, but if you can cross the ocean, you can cross the ocean.
Right.
It's not like one of those things where it's like, no, theoretically, I think in OG Darkon, it was like there's a wall of zombies, and theoretically, if you cast fly, you could fly over the wall of zombies, but no, you won't. You're gonna get dragged down and fall into the zombies. It's like, no, here she doesn't want that to happen. She wants you to get through.
So the last thing for our Dark Lord section is the quotes that are the role-playing trait, ideal, bond, and flaw, and Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. These are always in the form of quotes. We like to take these and find quotes for our characters that fit those things, and to put in the write-up, which of course we're going to do on DM's Guild, a free write-up of this domain, which hopefully might have some mechanics where I'm able to do something with the soul jar to be the name taking away. I'm gonna give it the old college try, guys.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. I can't be much help because I'm a 3E Pathfinder main, so I'm going to be throwing in way too many numbers if he asks me to help.
What about the +2 modifiers?
Yeah!
What happened to all my +2 modifiers? Where did they go? So this was a bit tricky. Not tricky for the usual reason we have with things like Clue or Callahan, where they're just a man of few words, because, no, Yubaba gets a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
Yubaba has a good amount of dialogue. The big challenge here in looking for quotes was that we have back projected so much into Yubaba. This is very much like some of the Dark Lords, like Clue or Callahan, we can just take as is and Ravenloft dies a little bit. But this is we had to do this whole backstory.
Yeah.
And so, no, there are not a lot of quotes in a movie for characterization that's not part of the movie. That's our nerdy fanfic.
Yeah, there's the thing about her being a mountain spirit. Like,
yeah. So that was the challenge. So this is what I have so far. Like, if none of these work, we could do a deep dive and look for some more, but here's what I have so far. So this one is actually a Zeniba quote, but we have to include it. Once you do something, you never forget, even if you can't remember.
Ooh.
And that's like talking about the Haku and everything that happened. And that's like one of the few quotes that could be about all this nonsense we made.
Right.
So, your name's Chihiro? What a pretty name. And it belongs to me now.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, right. That's a classic one.
Yes.
So here is a really long, it's like her basically saying, Chihiro's asking for the job, and she's saying no. And it's like almost a speech. And I feel like it's going to have some dotting.
Right.
But I think they think there's something here. I don't want to hear such a stupid request. You're just a stinking, useless weakling. And this is certainly no place for humans. It's a bathhouse for the spirits. It's where they come to replenish themselves. And you humans always make a mess of things. Like your parents who gobbled up the food of the spirits like pigs. They got what they deserved, and you should be punished too. So there's a couple of things to unpack there.
Yeah.
You always have just being straight mean, stupid request, stinking, useless weakling. Bathhouse for the spirits, who replenish yourself. I'll probably make that like a power thing. I'm sure I'll work that in somewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's something in the you humans always make a mess of
I was
things.
thinking that too, yeah. Those just being so disgusted by human greed.
Right, and that does kind of loop into our version.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something there with the you humans always make a mess of things, and if we don't want to be specific, though I think we'll probably get away with it.
Yeah.
If we wanted to cut the parents who gobble the food like pigs, you could just have a very generic, maximum generic, you humans always make a mess of things, they got what they deserved, and you should be punished too.
Yeah.
Look, a valued customer, welcome to our bath. Oh, it's money. Son, take the nice customer's money. It's all your fault. You're so greedy. You attract terrible guests. All right, I'm on my way. Don't let him eat anyone else till I get down there. That's sort of the managerial.
Right.
Right, that's a good quote if we want to express Yubaba as boss.
Yes.
Of the, like, it's your fault this happened, employees. You're so greedy. Don't let him eat anyone else till I get down there.
That's all in a day's work.
No, that if we don't end up using that for one of our DM's Guild write-up Dark Lord quotes, I use it for something.
Yeah.
It's too good a characterization in a nutshell. Haku's bleeding all over the carpet. Get him out of here. He'll be dead soon anyway.
That should give no nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's specific, but I feel like it communicates such a perfect... You don't need to know who Haku is to get, like, the characterization expressed with that quote.
Yeah.
He's destroying everything. It's costing us a fortune, so suck up to him and get every last speck of gold. And then these two, I absolutely know we're going to have some variant of these two.
Okay.
Fine, but on one condition. I get to give Sen one final test. If she fails, she's mine. And then I already got... But a deal is a deal, sweetie. I have to give Sen one final
Ooh.
test. Just a deal is a deal. Considering
is a deal,
everything
sweetie.
we've said about her,
Yes.
a deal is a deal, sweetie.
Yes.
I get to give Sen one final test.
Oh,
or even
gosh.
but a deal is a deal, sweetie.
Yes.
So, yeah, role-playing trait, ideal, bond, and flaw. So,
I kind of like Haku is bleeding all over the carpet. Get him out of here. He'll be dead soon anyway for trait.
yes.
very-
That is the just ice-cold... This was like her apprentice right-hand man, and she's just, who got injured doing a mission for her.
Yeah.
And she's just like, get him out of here. He's bleeding all over the carpet. He'll be dead soon anyway. So that's a good one for trait. And yeah, that is like the PC's interaction with her is probably going to be that very like cold managerial role-playing trait. Ideal, bond, and flaw. Ideal's got to be one of the ones about money.
Yeah.
That's even our whole thing, is that is like the thing that's guiding her and pulling her, is her desire for money, her endless thirst for money. So you could have, look, a valued customer, welcome to our bass. Oh, it's money, send, take the nice customer's money. You're so greedy, you attack terrible guests. All right, these are so good.
These are so good. He's destroying everything that's costing us a fortune to suck up to and get every last speck of gold.
Also have the ideal of a deal is a deal, sweetie.
Yeah, I was thinking a deal is a deal, sweetie, might be the ideal.
Yeah. And the ideal. All right.
A deal.
Bond, I think it's got to be like the prophet and the bathhouse. I'm thinking that it's all your fault. You're so greedy. You attack terrible guests. All right, I'm on my way. Don't let me eat anything else till I get down there. Because that's sort of one of the ones of being like the bathhouse manager. Or else he's destroying everything, costs a fortune, suck up to him and get every last speck of gold.
I think I like that.
Okay, cool. Bond. For Bond. Yeah, that this is the Bond, like, it's to the bathhouse.
And to the money. And
also to the employees, but a very contemptuous Bond of the employees. Like, they are her employees.
But they're just kind of a tool for getting gold.
Yeah. So now flaw. I could see the flaw being, once you do something you never forget, even if you can't remember. Though I think that's important. I'll probably have that as a quote for the backstory. But it's not like really her flaw.
Yeah, and I can't see it as like swapping out the ideal or bond for it either, because I don't see it as being either of those.
What about the you humans always make a mess?
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
So you humans always make a mess of things. Your parents who gobble up the food. So I'll figure I'll cut that bit and just have it be. Humans always make a mess of things. They got what they deserved, and you should be punished too.
Yeah.
That even is sort of the vindictive streak. Helps like the vindictive streak.
The vindictiveness, and even that all of this is, she's not looking in the mirror and seeing her own greed.
Right.
Yeah, but she's like, she's punishing the humans for their greed, but not seeing her own greed.
Right, and it like suggests the woundedness, and like it's not getting into it specific. But the great thing is like, we can read that quote and see our version of Yubaba in that quote.
Yeah.
It's like those videos where they, take Alec Guinness talking to Luke and intercut the stuff.
Yeah.
And like, because of the human brains work the way they work, you're like, oh wow, I totally see Alec Guinness acting this story that's not going to exist for decades after his death. That he had no way of knowing. He was just trying to do cool, good acting. So yeah, it's got that element to it. Okay, so we have our ideal Bond trait flaw, our final component for writing up our Dark Lord in our domain write-up. But of course, as we've mentioned, one of the ones with that Bond, it had to be connected with the bathhouse. And we've talked about the ruler, the owner, the boss of the bathhouse. Now let's talk a bit more about the bathhouse itself in a section we like to call
The Land. The Land. The Fae are notorious for their backbiting and intrigue, so it is perhaps appropriate that a bathhouse serving them is filled with machinations to rival a Borkin court. Infected with Yubaba's greed and deprived of any identity, purpose, or moral center outside their employment, the workers will do almost anything to secure a tip. During my time there, I saw attendants bribing the foreman, stealing bath tokens, and even poisoning rivals who had been assigned to wealthier customers so that they could step in. Yubaba mercilessly punishes anyone whose schemes threaten the efficiency or reputation of the bathhouse, if she can catch them. It was impossible not to notice the physical differences between the various members of the bathhouse. While many of the menial laborers looked almost entirely human, others had decidedly alien characteristics, from multiple long, spider-like arms to frog-like faces to, in the case of Yubaba's apprentice Haku, a full-fledged dragon form. My initial theory was that Yubaba employed fae and spirits for the more desirable positions, while leaving humans to do the rest. I still believe this to be partially true. From my limited interactions with Haku, I do not believe he was ever human. A later incident at the bathhouse, however, put this hierarchy in a new light. At one point, the foreman refused to give me a bath token that my customer had specifically requested, saying that the aromas of the herbal soak would be neutralized by my vile human stench. I used Mage Hand to steal it. As I was preparing the bath, I noticed that my own hand had changed in appearance, the skin becoming as spectral and transparent as the magical one I had summoned, the bones clearly visible beneath. I believe now that the longer humans remain at the bathhouse, the more our bodies change, with the most senior members being the most dramatically transformed of all.
So this is one of those that we don't have too much to talk about.
It's a bathhouse.
It's a building.
Yeah.
It's a very large building, but that it's a building.
And there are some surrounding grounds. You've got like the pig pens and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about the grounds. So the domain is the bathhouse.
Got kind of 2 house domains in a row.
Yeah, that's us, man. We like small. We go small. It's actually going to be a room. A domain is a single room.
Next is going to be inside out. It's going to be one person's brain.
One person's brain is the domain, yes. So, Inside Out coming soon. Obviously, we have this wonderful analog for the idea of the bathhouse of the spirits, which is, in D&D terms, the Feywild. Like, you wouldn't necessarily have, like, Ravenloft, Shadowfell, like ghosts and vampires going to a spa. But you have the Feywild, you have this whole idea of the domains of delight, and you absolutely can have this whole giant customer base of creatures from the Feywild, highborn, lowborn. If you have enough money, you can come and go relax and go to the sauna and go to the spa and get massages. And this is a bathhouse for the Fey.
Yeah. If you want to do kind of the Ravenloft as a trap, visitors come in but they don't come out, then it can still be a bathhouse for the Shadow Fae. If you want to be able to have it be more porous for the Feywild so that you can have all of these various and sundry Fey NPCs coming and going, then you can do that. If that makes your brain hurt, then I see you.
She said, glancing around. Who could I be talking about? It's not how Ravenloft works, honey. Or they could not.
But no, you sell the Shadow Fae.
And the great thing is that the Shadow Fae, so they're intra Ravenloft Fae, and they're based in enough of the fairy tales and the fantasy and the archetype that they give you that kind of like courtly social structure. So there was like a Seelie and Unseelie court,
there is
right?
Seelie and Unseelie court, yeah.
And so it's enough of that kind of social structure that, like, there could be a bathhouse.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those, if you've got Fae and you've got, like, they have bowls and they have poisons and they have, they plot against each other and they have factions and conspiracies, there can be a spa. There can be a bathhouse. As long as you have a sort of court of Versailles type social structure, you could totally aesthetically justify a bathhouse. So we're imagining, this is a bathhouse open to all the Fae. This is neutral ground. We mentioned there's the Unseelie, there's the Seelie, but you know what? Like, you're cutthroat assassins trying to murder each other outside, but here you're just awkwardly sharing a sauna. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that. This is neutral ground.
They're actually, because I was looking up some stuff about historical Japanese bathhouses as part of the research for this, and there's a whole thing that a lot of bathhouses in Japan don't allow tattoos, and that's their way of saying no Yakuza without actively offending the Yakuza. And you can actually have a thing here where it's like, no headwear. That includes, but is not limited to, red caps.
Right, yes.
No headwear.
We have a dress code. Sorry, Mr. Cap. What a coincidence. Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. So, those are the customers. And we even have, like, you had the wonderful Spirited Away, like, you totally got that, like, the customers are these, like, spirits. These, like, spirits and gods and, like, important beings. And then the staff is much more like mortals and, like, commoners.
Yeah.
So we're imagining that it is a whole mortals are only allowed as employees. Like, otherwise you get turned into stuff. Like, any mortals that find their way to the bathhouse get turned into coal if they're lucky, pigs if they're not.
Yeah.
Because, heck, I'd rather be coal than pig.
Yeah.
Unless they're an employee. Then they're because you even get that wonderful sort of, you have the Fae and the mortals. And you have the customers and the staff. The upper class, the lower class. We mentioned before that a core part of this domain is we're imagining that there is that greed aura. That the longer you're there, the more your heart kind of gets infected with Yubaba's greed and graspingness and covetousness. And there are some ways around it. And the big one being that you have your name. But also just if you have really high wisdom score, because we're imagining in D&D terms this would be making wisdom saves. So if you have a good wisdom score, that's going to help you. And if you just have, like, something keeping you out of it, keeping you out of this greed aura, like
reminding you of who you are.
Or of what you want to be, or just some, like, kind of lifeline to your humanity. So I know you had the idea of Kamanji, that, like...
Because he has, like, the train tickets, so that's, like, a reminder of who he is, and even that, like, maybe the train tickets have his name on them, so he still remembers his name, and so that's kind of getting him out of the greed aura, and that's why Kamaji is still a stand-up guy.
Right, and you even have, like, Lynn, if we're imagining Lynn as someone that's made a lot of good wisdom saves, that she's, like, the one going down and kind of hanging out with Kamaji. She's like, this is a safer place for me to be a human being.
Yeah.
And also, this is not necessarily a one-way thing, because we have Haku. So the idea is if you encounter things from your old life, then they can kind of wake up your heart.
Yeah. That even, like, Chihiro forgot she was Chihiro until Haku reminded her she thought she was Sen for a while. And, we didn't see that changing her personality at all. But in this version, like, you could say that it did, and then he reminded her name was Chihiro, and then she, that pulled her back. Yeah,
or even just, we get that, like, Haku's normally a huge jerk. He's, like, as bad as any of these people.
Yeah.
But he runs into Chihiro. And that just, like, awakens this spark of humanity, this spark of empathy and kindness in him. And the more time he spends around her, the more this kind of awakens in him.
Yeah.
And once again, you have lots of plot potential then of you, which we'll get into later, but you get that then gives you probably already having, like, stories unfold in your mind of how the bringing them something from their old life could help awaken their humanity. So then, as we mentioned, there's the bathhouse itself. I don't think we need to go through, like, the rooms.
Yeah.
It's the bathhouse. And honestly, there's baths. There's a house.
There's sleeping quarters.
They are housed.
Yes.
I do even, like, I kind of like, just because this is me, this is my thing, as been established, that it even is this sort of, there's not necessarily a floor plan. That it is, like, the weird, like, magic TARDIS-y, like, there's just like branches. All of the baths and all of the saunas and all of the guest rooms and everything would not actually fit in that physical space. We're not going to go through room by room. But a couple of important things worth mentioning. We already mentioned you have Kamanji, and the idea of the boiler room is sort of a safe zone. And that's, a thing for Lynn, and that could be a thing for your PCs to pick up on, of, like, there's this kind of psychic pressure, but when you go hang out with Kamanji, it goes away.
Yeah.
And you have that pressure off you, and also he's just, like, a nice guy. You have to have this one person that's not a selfish, grasping jerk.
He's not going to stab you in the back.
He's not going to stab you in the back. He's not going to rat you out. He might help you if he sympathizes with you. Rachel, you mentioned the outbuildings.
Yeah, and then with the outbuildings, like, the only time we really see anyone do anything with the outbuildings is in the very beginning. Like, if you want to have stuff where it's like a whole complex and they're, they go around and they get the food from the outbuildings, you can. We're not going to do a whole lot with them. But since that is an important part of the beginning of the movie, we were thinking that maybe the outbuildings are there specifically as lures. That, like, because they need to get new employees, they need to snag new mortals, so they actually have, like, in the outbuildings, the food is there specifically to lure people in. And that, that gets some new employees, that also gets some new pork.
Yeah, that replenishes the larder. One way or another.
Yep. It's gonna pay off.
Yeah, in the movie you had kind of the complex, and then you had the bridge that went into the actual bathhouse building. And I think it's very clear that that sort of was the magical threshold of the bathhouse. You had the whole thing where she had to try and hold her breath to be invisible to go across, and trying to stop the stink spirit from crossing the bridge. That's the border, that's the threshold. Honestly, I really love the idea of now a domain that sends these little like lures out into other places that are like little trap that can then snatch people and pull them back in.
That could actually be a really nasty version of the carnival flyers.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this weird food stand that has the most delicious food you've ever smelled.
And then it yanks you back in, yeah.
And then we have the sort of building in the domain proper, and that's like most of the domain. But then we do have, you mentioned, like the stables and the gardens.
Yeah. And just stables and the gardens, they've got pigs. Yum, pigs. Long pork.
Pork.
And they have chickens and whatnot, and vegetable medicinal gardens. You can have all kinds of really cool magical plants going there, because who knows what kinds of plants Fae are going to use for bathhouse. They're going to be awesome. Or
even just like your lavender and rose hips and stuff. A spa would want all these plant extracts for the medicinal baths or for the scent. And this is going to be a thing we're going to loop back to in terms of your PCs when we get to the adventure section, because this gives you a lot of possibilities for PC jobs.
Yes.
That, Sen was just kind of your, lowest level drudge, like chambermaid. But you don't all necessarily need to be Sens, and so having, these other parts of the operation that Sen doesn't interact with as much.
Yeah.
That gives you potential for your PCs to have different jobs when they get their spoiler alert for what we see the adventure being. We see the worker dorms, right? We have Sen and Lin go to this dorm, and there's a couple other women living there, and that makes a good home base. I think I like that as if the PCs all come in together, they get assigned to the same dorm, and then that's their if they have their individual jobs during the day, you go and sort of do your work phase, and then after your shift's done, they can all then we all get together in the room, we all talk over what did we find, what did we find out, who's doing this, who's doing that, who snatched the key. It's always good to give the PCs a home base.
Yes, definitely.
It's your classic, it's why they all end up in the same 2 rooms in the inn, because it just gives them a chance to plot and scheme and plan and have those scenes where they're talking through what they want to do for the day. And then the one kind of non-bathhousey place that also is essential to this.
Yes.
And that's Swamp Bottom.
And so Swamp Bottom, that's where we've got Zeniba's house. And, again, our version of Zeniba, it's the one person split down the middle. She's the other half of Yubaba. Again, possibly Zeniba is Yubaba's actual name. And whenever she hears Zeniba say her name, she's just kind of And we're kind of imagining that, since again, this is a horror setting, and we want to be able to generate more plots because the plot of Spirited Away is very gentle and very non-D&D. You could do a much darker and more aggressive version of Zeniba. She could actually be kind of lashing out and attacking Yubaba without provocation, because if this is the true essence of this mountain spirit, can you imagine how much she hates Yubaba for just this corruption of her? And so you could have it being that she is, attacking, lashing out, how dare this, thing, but, that calling itself connected to her mountain be going around doing all of this. And that lets you generate some plots and also have just, a much stronger thorn in Yubaba's side. And people getting caught in the conflict between the two of them.
So, we've mentioned this is not a horror movie, it's a very gentle movie, but, the stuff with all the paper birds going after Hako, that's thrilling. That's thrilling stuff.
Yes.
That's intense. And the idea is you find out, she was justified. He went and he stole her golden seal. And this was kind of the defensive curse. But, what if this is just Tuesday?
Yeah.
What if this is just sort of these two just magically sniping at each other? And that's part of life in the bathhouse.
Yeah.
And if you're unlucky, you, as Rachel said, you get caught in the crossfire.
Yeah. And it wasn't that he stole her golden seal. It was just that he was out and Zeniba was like, ooh, Haku, he works for my sister. Something bad. Yeah.
So, we other than that, those are some specific things to mention, to point out. But other than that, it's what you'd have in a bathhouse. Whatever you could think of. That's the great thing. If you wanted to have like a gym for them to practice martial arts or whatever, absolutely there could be a gym or like free weights.
Yeah.
I mentioned massages, yeah. Or I don't think we ever see a sauna, but no one would be shocked if they found out there was a sauna in one shot. They're like, oh, there's one shot where you can see a sauna. Your jaw wouldn't drop. So it's whatever you can think of being in a bathhouse. I like sort of 5-star resort style sauna spa. But that is probably not going to be full of treasure and traps and goblins to fight and the normal like things that make up the gameplay, the action of Dungeons and Dragons.
Although it might be full of Tollyknox getting mani-pedis.
Yes. I love you.
I love you too.
So, Rachel, what do you do with it?
Dread possibilities. Thankfully, my time as L was limited. On my patron's advice, I had written my name on a piece of parchment and hidden it among my spell components. When I cast Fly in order to scrub the shoulders of a massive tree spirit, I pulled out my name along with the wing feather that I needed for the spell, and my memories flooded back like water from the tap above me. I knew that those who attempted to run away from the bathhouse without their names could look forward to transforming into an empty, purposeless creature called a no-face. As I had recovered my name, I might have been able to escape without that particular risk, but I knew enough about Fey contracts to be wary of reneging on one. I had to find some way to buy out my contract from Yubaba, but how? My chance arrived one day when the bathhouse fell into chaos, for several of those no-faces had found their way inside and were devouring workers and customers alike. With no identities of their own, and the constant greed of the domain spurring them onward, they were attempting to fill the emptiness inside of their souls by consuming others. I informed Yubaba that I would help her with the infestation if she voided my contract. Given that the no-faces had just devoured the Lord of the Dancing Men, she had little choice but to agree. Once we had chased the no-faces away from the bathhouse, Yubaba turned on her employees in a rage, demanding to know who had invited them inside and thus nullified her various magical protections from intruders. She was shocked when the workers informed her that she had ordered them to invite the no-faces inside. Although illusion magic seemed like the obvious culprit, I did not know who would have had the motive to cast it. Perhaps a Fey noble who knew that a rival was relaxing at the bathhouse that day? I made a stop by the boiler room on my way out, for Kamaji the boiler man seems knowledgeable about the inner workings of the bathhouse and had always been kind to me. He informed me that Yubaba had an identical twin, Zeniba, and that the two had all the tender familial affection of the warring siblings of Kalikari. Zeniba was constantly working to sabotage the bathhouse, while Yubaba sought to seal her sister's magic for herself. Zeniba must have posed as Yubaba for this particular escapade. Kamaji had no insight as to what had started the war between them, only that he had once heard Zeniba describe the two of them as one person split down the middle. Perhaps, like the no-faces, they longed to devour one another in order to become whole.
So what brought your PCs to the Bathhouse of the Spirits? Probably not the same thing that brought Sen and her family to the Bathhouse of the Spirits. I feel like there is a frickin' like cheer squad flag team parade of red flags of anyone that is the smidgiest bit genre savvy.
Yeah.
To not do the things that they did.
Like, maybe we can be generous and say Chihiro's parents failed all their
Yes, no, I'm sure they did.
But
like, I cannot see any PC group.
No.
Yeah, they're super game. And they're like, super, we're doing the story.
Yeah.
That you'd be like, there's this mysterious stall of food, and it's the most delicious food you've ever smelled. Do you want to eat it? And they're like, no, we're good. Like, oh, it smells so good, and you're hungry. No, I'm good.
Nope.
And there's like no one around, no like cook. It's just in the middle of nowhere that's fully cooked. No, thanks. I've got my rations.
We learned our lesson when we bought that nice old lady's pies and bread.
Yeah, right.
Thanks.
I've got my 3D10 field rations. I'll just eat that and not be hungry anymore. So the more likely thing is to have PCs kind of playing the Chihiro role. To have it be that they are after trying to rescue some NPC.
Yeah.
Like some NPC who is not a genre-savvy hyper-protagonist. like your average PC, but is instead an NPC, so they can be extremely genre unsavvy.
Extremely.
And so they get pulled in, and the PCs find out they get pulled in. They like follow the trail, find their way through the Fae, crossing to the bathhouse, and have to do a Chihiro. And have to be like, okay, if you get a job and work here, you can find a way to save this person and have them not be eaten.
Yeah.
If you want something more organic, especially if you have a Feywild game, like this would be an excellent side mission for Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Yeah, this, honestly, Spirited Away works better as a Feywild setting than as a Ravenloft setting, but this is what you chose, so we're going for it.
This is our remit.
Yes.
So if you wanted to do as a kind of a transition with Wild Beyond the Witchlight, you could. And if you have a Feywild game, as I mentioned, that opens up so many other, like Wild Beyond the Witchlight, that opens up so many other dramatic possibilities. It could be you need access to a specific, like, Archfey. Like, this could be an alternative thing for one of the three sisters, the three hags in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. You're like, okay, I know they're going to be, this is their vacation week, and they're going to the bathhouse of the spirits, and I can be super, like, crossing social boundaries and confront them on vacation, and, corner them in a sauna, and force them to, like, talk to me and answer my questions, and, like, do whatever I need them to do.
This is like going to a con and shoving your manuscript under a bathroom stall levels.
Yes, it is. And the nice thing here is you're not immediately in conflict with Yubaba. Like, with the Chihiro story, and this is a plus of that story in some senses, because
it depends on what you want to do with your story.
It pulls you into that immediate conflict. It makes you this very central figure that you are like, here is this person that's been turned into a pig or whatever, and I want to rescue them, so I'm in immediate conflict with Yubaba. Whereas this is like, I just want to confront this particular Archfey and have them answer my questions. You're not immediately in conflict with Yubaba. Like, she could be functioning as a bit more of a, like, friendly or at least neutral, as opposed to full-on antagonistic NPC.
Yeah, and that could be if your PCs... If they're full-on murder hobos, you're not going to want to do Spirited Away with them. If they've got a little bit of a combative streak to them,
yes.
then this might be, you want to confront this Archfey, but the way to do it is to go to this bathhouse, but you're mortal, so you need to get a job. Like, your PCs that have a bit of a murder hobo-ish streak, they'll go along with that. And whereas they might, if Yubaba turns one of their beloved NPCs into pigs, they might just try to set her on fire.
Just roll initiative, which is not going to work in this situation. Another possibility, we mentioned you trying to get in touch with the Fae. We've mentioned this in our Night on Bald Mountain things. Could be really fun if you have an Archfey Warlock patron.
Yeah.
That you would need to get access to. Your patron keeps giving you the runaround, and you're sending spells go right to voicemail. And so now you're like, no, I know this jerk is on vacation. I know this is his spa week, and so I'm gonna, like, be a real annoying subordinate and just confront him in the sauna. Another thing, which should be, I think, really interesting flip around, is if you had a Fae NPC who was sick and who needed this kind of, like, medicinal purification, but they're not like an Archfey. They're not like a high aristocratic, wealthy, or important Fae. So you're sort of, like, working to sneak them into the employee door. Like, you kind of have the stink spirit, and what if they were, like, a sort of commoner Fae, but they really need, like, access to this medicinal healing bath. So you're working there to sneak them in, or even just to get an employee discount for them.
Yeah. And then another thing you could do with, if you have a Fae NPC that you know and you want to run into them, rather than having them fill the stink spirit role, then you could actually have them be filling the Haku role. You could have it be that there is this kind of Fae or Fae adjacent NPC who you've had cordial relationships with in the past, but you run into them and they're much colder, they don't remember their name, they might remember you, especially like if they're, their favorite of the PCs, they remember that PC but not any of the other ones. And that's a nice hook, is again, you know something's wrong, you don't know what's wrong, and so you have to get a job at the bathhouse in order to figure out how to help your NPC buddy.
Yeah, to be allowed to just stay around long enough. This could also be another great, like, as a follow-up to Wild Beyond the Witchlight. If it's this whole, you're doing more Feywild adventures, and you take one of those NPCs that one or more of your PCs really glom to, and now suddenly they're being a huge jerk, and they're really, like, not acting like themselves when they run into them. And you, like, trace it back to the bathhouse.
Yeah.
So you have lots of good options to get you there. As all of these has circled, one of the nice things is this setting inherently has a hook to get you engaged and to get you kind of playing along, which is that whole mortals have to work there.
Yeah.
That, like, you either have to leave or get turned into coal or a pig, or you have to get a job there. And this is coupled with the fantastic, like, she has to give you a job if you ask. You don't have to roll for this at all. She has to give you a job if you ask. And so pretty much every way we see this story happening, the way we see any kind of Spirited Away story happening, is starting with that you need to go to the bathhouse for some reason, and so you need to get a job.
Yeah.
So it's going to have you find out about this, you have this initial meeting with Yubaba, she tries to, like, scare you away, but you're making the rolls, you're making the saves, you're fighting the monster she's summoning, whatever, and you just, I feel like if you tell PCs the whole, she has to give you a job if you ask, they're going to have a lot of fun doing this scene of, like, not letting her trick them, not letting her scare them away, just over and over again. Please give me a job.
PCs are going to really enjoy badgering her.
And then finally the end, knowing they're going to win if they can just keep fighting that monster.
It's adorable that you think they'll say please.
And then you have that wonderful thankfulness and Spirited Away, kind of kick in the teeth of they sign the contract and she takes their name away.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a real, I think, I almost want to run this with PCs that have this Spirited Away just for that, like, moment of, oh, wow, this is, like, serious.
Oh, holy
This is a thing. Then a lot of the drama of the story is going to be, once again, like Model and Spirited Away, being part of the bathhouse, doing the work of the bathhouse, incidents that come up in the bathhouse, and kind of winning over the staff.
Yeah.
As would happen. In the write-up, I'm going to give some advice for basically doing something like the reputation system, which we used for Princess Mononoke. Hey, it's our Ghibli, our second Ghibli reputation. Yeah. And that's a great metric to sort of track here's how you're winning people over.
I mean, it makes sense, because Ghibli movies are all about winning over the hostile. Right. With your kindness and pluck. Being
part of a community and hard work. And yeah, no, you're right. So let's keep it going. It's a reputation network for every Ghibli movie. But this will be, you'll have internal drama. You'll have, like, drama that comes up in the workplace. And you'll win over enough of the staff. And then finally, you reach some kind of climax. And this is like the equivalent of Sen going to Swamp Bottom and returning the gold seal and all that. Yeah. This is like some big climactic adventure that then leads to you, like, accomplishing your initial goal. Whether it's rescuing an NPC, or whether it's purifying an NPC that's been corrupted somehow, getting access to the baths, or something like happens with Haku, if you're able to, like, break Yubaba's spell on some Feywild NPC that you're friends with, but, like, some kind of climax. And the nice thing, if you want to do it a little bit more D&D, because Spirited Away is not a D&D movie, we have built in this idea that Yubaba and Zeniba are much more going at it with hammer and tongs than they usually are. So you could even have the idea that, like, Zeniba does something that really puts Yubaba against the ropes, and Yubaba's like, okay, you know what, if you go and do this thing for me, to get back at Zeniba, then I'll void your contract. Yeah, exactly. You could even do the Haku thing of, like, if you can go do a heist, if you can go steal her golden seal and bring it back to me, I will void your contract and I'll let your parents not be pigs anymore. Exactly. And I'll return you all to the mortal world. So, yeah, exactly. It's a great source of, okay, I'm desperate, I'm going to let you void your contract. If you do this, one last job. Yes. One last job. For me. In the write-up, we will have a couple of, like, things that could happen, domestic drama that could happen, but we'll also have a couple of potential climaxes. Yeah. So that's one, as we mentioned, I think will be a really cool one to be the go, get past Zeniba's defenses and fight her magical guard and steal a golden seal. But you also might do a version of, like, the No-Face story, where it's just some horrible monster has gotten in, maybe Zeniba even sent it. And you fight it, and you stop it from destroying the bathhouse. Yeah. If you even have a party that's all about, like, kind of the gentle, cozy thing, then it might even be that your climax is the stink spirit. Yeah, exactly. Like, after you do that, then it's so impressive that Yubaba decides to let your parents not be pigs anymore. You can do a version of the stink spirit, it's the river, it's purified, it's the river, and it just, like, rains gold down. And Yubaba's like, yeah, okay, you made me so much money. I'll let you get out of this and void your contract, especially if you have a good high reputation score and all the people in the bathhouse are, like, cheering. You're like, yeah, let her go, yeah.
Or we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. If you just really love the idea of this being a viper's nest of archfey politics, then the bathhouse might just be like a backdrop for that. You're kind of if you're there to talk to this Fey NPC that you came to talk to, that you're going to bombard them on their vacation, then it might just be all about kind of navigating these archfey politics and getting out of that in one piece.
Yeah. So, that either way, whatever it is, we see this as you work there, you try and sort of win people over, climb the ladder, you have various domestic drama, and then you have some kind of climax that lets you get to your goal and gets your contract voided. But let's say that kind of adventure with the dramatic climax is for younger players or older players, because this is truly a movie that's the delight of all ages.
Yes.
So let's say you are aiming more toward the Sen or Chihiro age group of your players. They are cool kids and they love Spirited Away because they're cool kids, and you want to do a sort of Spirited Away style story. This is one where like you can mostly do the movie, but there are actually, like, some body horror elements you might want to tone down.
Yeah, there are... Usually, for Aging Down, we just say do the movie.
Because you're doing a Disney movie, yeah.
This is one kind of like Haunted Mansion last month, where you actually do need to pull back a little bit for your younger players. I remember one of your little cousins was on a Ghibli kick, and she, her mom was explaining to us they tried to Spirited Away, and she was concerned at the pig part.
That was the word.
So they had to stop.
She was concerned. So they had to stop. Yeah. So, and it's great. It's what makes a genius kids movie. It's why it makes it the kind of movie that kids are going to watch and going to stick in their head forever. Is it a genuinely horrific elements of like the pigs or of like no face at the end?
Yeah.
Like that is like kids are going to have nightmares. And Hayao Miyazaki, I salute you for that. You have given children nightmares with both their parents turning into pigs and horrible amorphous blob monsters eating all the people around them.
As children of the 80s, this pleases us.
Yes. So like dial that down. That's the obvious one. Also kind of step away from what we're doing with having it be, as Rachel mentioned, this horrible viper's nest, that this is where you do just kind of lean into the movie. Yeah. Like people are brusque, people are rude at first, but almost everyone in the bathhouse is basically good-hearted. And like this is much more authentically Ghibli.
Yes.
Everyone's basically good-hearted, and through just pluck and hard work and kindness and loyalty, the PCs win over everyone. So at the end, they're all, the whole bathhouse staff is cheering when she answers the question about her parents, right? And so, have that, definitely, because once again, that is such a kid thing. We are really playing into the potential horror of the loss of identity. Yeah. Like that being the thing that you just become this, bathhouse cog, that your whole life is this work. Your whole existence is this scrambling for position or promotion. And once again, kind of playing that down, and you can still have a sort of aura that's affecting people. It can just be the greed. Yeah. And kids are going to get the whole, oh no, Yubaba's so greedy that all the people around her get greedy too. And that then you're sort of helping people like Lin or Haku. You're kind of helping them shake off the greediness and find their kindness. Even once again, kind of this is going back to the source material of the, Lin is still a good, kind person. Chihiro, she's only full-bore Sen and not remember that her name is Chihiro for 10 minutes. Yeah. And we never see any of the psychological effects of that. Kamaji's great. Haku, we hear about what a jerk he is, but we never see him being a full, the worst we see is him being kind of brusque. And so, just getting into that, and that's a good level for the kids. But Rachel, what if it's not your Sen and your heroes around the gaming table? What if it's more your Lins and your Kamajis around the gaming table? What if you have some adults who have cool adults with cool taste, and they want to do a Spirited Away game?
Well, as always with Aging Up versus Aging Down, you want to do the opposite of what we said with Aging Down. I don't think we're going to need a skip ahead warning. If we do, future Rachel's going to come in and make me eat my words. But
No Face ate their words.
No Face did eat their words and everything else. With the psychological horror, the loss of identity and everything, you can get into some of that stuff we talked about in our Toy Story episode about making that more psychologically horrifying. With the Toy Story episode, if you haven't listened to that one, the idea behind it was basically that it's carionettes and the PCs get turned into toys, and they are Buzz Lightyear. They know that they're actually a spaceman. And the horror is that when Buzz Lightyear accepts that he's a toy at the end of Toy Story, he's learning to love Big Brother.
Right, that's ego death.
Yeah.
Listen to our Toy Story episode, guys. Mm-hmm. It's really good.
And we talked
and buy the adventure.
We talked about kind of having that happen gradually to make it really more horrifying for your players. And you could do a similar thing here with Spirited Away. Even if they are kind of like, if they've remembered their name and are trying to hold on to it, you could say stuff like, oh yeah, you've forgotten your mother's face. Like, make a wisdom save. You don't remember what your dog looked like. Or was it a cat? You had a pet. You know you had a pet. You can play up that whole idea of the no faces used to be people. You could have some kind of like horrible little echo of humanity showing. Like maybe even there can be stories about somebody who ran away, and then one of the no faces you see like some little bit of that person still.
And you're like, oh no,
oh no. And then another possibility, because we're kind of going with the idea that a lot of the workers, some of them used to be some of these mountain spirits, like not the spirits of the mountain themselves, but like spirits of animals and things that live on the mountain. Right. But also some of them used to be human and are like becoming these workers. You get the sense Lynn used to be human and just doesn't remember that she used to be human, and we're kind of playing into that more. And kind of doing with the workers kind of having more extreme transformations that, like, if you played Changeling the Lost, where the Fae would like change the people to make them fit their jobs better, doing that. Like in the movie they're all still basically human,
right? We have a couple frogs,
but you could have it be more of a like, oh yeah, they've got like these bizarre like tentacle fingers for reaching into the nooks and crannies and cleaning the tubs, and you could have that be with some of the NPCs, and you could have the PCs starting to develop that.
Kind of using Kamaji as a model, and the idea that no, Kamaji actually was just a human.
Yeah.
And now he's a weird spider guy, because that's what made him able to do all the boiler.
Yes.
So to work the boiler, to work all the knobs and all the little shelves and all that.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, I'm having him be a Drider in the write-up.
Yes! So yeah, just doing that.
TLDR, Changeling the Lost.
Changeling the Lost.
Do Changeling the Lost.
I love Changeling the Lost so much. It is my second favorite gaming setting.
Wants to Changeling the Lost things? It's up on Patreon.
Yes,
oh my gosh. More about that.
Do not threaten me with a good
and or make Disney movies in it.
Mm-hmm. We already did Batman the Animated Series.
We did,
and Revolutionary Girl.
We did those things.
Like we were saying, having the workers be more of a viper's nest, not having them be mostly good-hearted, and like maybe even doing a thing where some of them act nice but they aren't.
Yeah.
Like, what if Lynn was actually a terrible person and made you trust her?
This would be a heck of a rug pull for your PCs to like have them meet Lynn and have her be friendly, and they're like, oh boy, it's our buddy Lynn, it's my favorite, I love Hercules.
Yes.
And then and then, surprise, she's a jerk.
She's just the worst. You could have, again, with getting into that whole psychological horror element. Spoilers. That giving the workers kind of this sense of loss they can't put their finger on, like having them start to say something about their past and then like blue screen and then shake their heads and keep going. That's
I gotta get back to work.
And then we mentioned the whole that we hear about Haku being bad, but we just see him being brusque. Don't do that. Just have Haku be awful. Like, he's Yubaba's right-hand man, and he's cold and terrible. Have him be cold and terrible. And, like, not, again, if you're having the one PC that he likes, like, not to them, but to everyone else.
Yes. So that is, you can do it with your San and Chihiros, you can do it with your Lin and Kamajis, you can do it with your, all the age spectrums of cool people that like this movie. And let's wrap up our discussion of Bathhouse of the Spirit and give you our parting thoughts, a section we like to call
Parting Thoughts.
So the first thing I want to do in Parting Thoughts is talk about the genres of horror of this setting.
Which we may have spoiled a little bit.
We may have spoiled mere moments ago. This is from Van Richten's Ravenloft. It has these different genres of horror. It's an incredibly good, useful part of that book. It talks about sort of different hallmarks of those genres, the genre expressed in different domains. It's very good for kind of guiding the horror role-playing. And psychological horror.
I actually was thinking dark fantasy as kind of the main because it is so Feywild.
No, that was my second. That was my second. My pair was going to be dark fantasy psychological horror.
I just had dark fantasy because I couldn't, I so strongly couldn't decide between psychological and body horror.
Definitely body horror. This is like the body horror capital of the Feywild. But
that's what they say on all their tourist pamphlets.
And big fancy old lettering. But I think psychological horror, because it's like body horror, you can have that. But psychological horror is like, it's inherent to the setting. It's like even the movie itself, you could say psychological horror. With the taking her name. Yeah. So absolutely body horror. That train makes a stop at Body Horror Junction on the way to Swamp Bottom.
Yeah.
But if we had to pick two, that's my pick.
That, like, you're right, because when we're talking about our sample adventures, that, like, if your climax doesn't involve No Face, and your thing that gets you in doesn't involve NPCs getting Chihiro's parents, then you could have an entire game here that doesn't involve... if you don't use any of our aging up ideas body horror, then you could do an entire game here that has no body horror at all. Yeah, so, okay, yep.
So the next thing we can talk about in this section is what kind of game to run here. Because some domains, like your Curse of Strahd, Barovia, or like something like Darkon, are really incredibly rich, narratively very fertile domain that could be your level 1 to 10 like full campaign. Like you could have your level 1 to 10 full campaign just in Darkon.
Yeah.
There is a level 1 to 10 full campaign just in Barovia, and it's not even the whole Barovia.
Yeah.
From the older material.
There's none of the former Gundarak stuff there.
But there's other domains like your Valachans, which we talked a bit about last thing, where they're really...
Or your Tempest, if you want to
get
into fairies.
in 5e. That really is one story. Like, it's really supposed to be like 1 6-hour session.
Yeah.
And those are both great. Those are both valuable. Those are both essential parts of what Ravenloft is. And my inclination for this domain is that, like a lot of our movie-derived ones, not quite a one-shot, because like, there is a lot of potential for subplots. But I think this is not your level 1 to 10 campaign.
I think it could be a level 1 to 10 campaign for a very specific group.
Yes.
I don't want to say that it's not a level 1 to 10 campaign, but I think if you had a very specific group that thrived on the social interactions.
Right.
You know, they find their names early on, so there's not the constant tension of trying to get their names. They have a name and a keepsake, so they're like, you know, part of it is the tension of holding that back from Yubaba. And, like, that they're willing to play along enough that you could even have some incidences of, like, Yubaba is quest giver and she sends them to do things.
Yeah.
Like, I think for exactly the right party, you could have a 1 to 10 campaign. And for almost exactly the right party, you could have a 1 to 5.
Yeah, no. I think, like, this is not a one-shot, but this is, like, a 2-level kind of game. This is not going to be 1 6-hour session, but it's not going to be... 20 6-hour sessions. This is going to be like 3 or 4 6-hour sessions. You could get like that would be kind of for me the perfect visit to this domain would be like 3 or 4 6-hour sessions.
It's not going to be 26-hour sessions unless it's our game in which you two are the least murderous PCs I've ever GM'd.
Where we are just like totally happy to. We've said the word cozy fantasy before. We're going to say it again. And another part of that perfect group, I would say it also has to be like, they're really into the cozy fantasy.
Yes.
They're really like totally content with like, this entire session was like chores and soap opera and office politics. And I am like, 2 thumbs up, love it.
Dice got rolled twice.
Yes.
Yeah. For exactly the right group, it's going to be, this is your entire campaign. But that's not most groups.
Yes. And even I think that's most not your average Ravenloft group. If I say I'm running a Ravenloft game, people are going to be making builds that are like, witch hunters and undead warlocks and stuff. And this might be a fun sidetrack for a couple of sessions, but it's a fun sidetrack for a couple of sessions.
Yeah.
This is, however, not Ravenloft's first bite at the dark fairy tale, dark sort of fey classic. Rachel rubs her hands in anticipation. Apple. So... Rachel, is there any older material, especially the sort of 2E, 3E Ravenloft material that would have any kind of parallel or connection with Spirited Away.
Oh, the Shadow Fae.
Yes.
Oh, the Shadow Fae. So, dear listeners, this is the part where we talk about how to take some of...
If Rachel was your only, like, Ravenloft point of contact, you would think the Shadow Fae were this, like, huge part of the setting.
Oh, yeah.
They were this, like, mega faction, domain-spanningly important setting element.
Yes.
Back to you.
Yes. Tom has played in multiple of my games, and yes. I love the Shadow Fae so much.
She sure does. Can confirm.
So this is the portion of the podcast, if you suddenly are like, what the actual butts is Rachel talking about, where we talk about some of the older material, the older lore, and how to either bring some of that older lore into your current game, because there's so much cool stuff that you can still bring into 5e. That's you know, edition agnostic. Or if you are running kind of more of the 2e, 3e setting, or like trying to bring in a lot of that, like, okay, yeah, Azulin is still the Dark Lord of Darkon, and this and that and the other thing, then how does this fit into that? So, Shadow Fae. If you want this to be pure 100% Ravenloft, then you're not going to have kind of this Feywild stuff that we're talking about, because pure 100% Ravenloft is getting into Ravenloft a one-way street. Roaches check in, but they don't check out. And so you can't have people coming in from the Feywild and having their spa weekend and then leaving. But the great thing is that Ravenloft has Fae too, and maybe they want spa weekends. So in Ravenloft, it's that they're the Shadow Fae, and you still have the Celion and Seelie courts.
Which is important.
Yes, you can still have this idea that this is a neutral ground where you've got, like, your bogies getting their back rubs, like, right across from your,
brownies.
Your brownies, yeah. And where, like, the Queen of Night and Flowers and the King of the Wild Hunt are both coming in, and you gotta make sure they stay separate because they used to be a thing and they're not a thing anymore, and we don't know what's going to happen, but either way it's going to be a lot of cleanup, so just
either way it's a hassle for the staff. However that interacts.
Yeah.
Very tumultuous relationship.
And one thing with the Shadow Fae, the reason they're called the Shadow Fae is because sunlight is actually deadly to them. So the bathhouse is constantly shrouded in darkness, because so you could do this whole cool thing where it's always night. There are candles everywhere.
Yeah, I love this. It's always night, and then everyone has little lamps. And in 5e terms, it's super easy to just take like whatever Fae creature you want from like a random monster manual and give them the drow sunlight sensitivity feature.
Yes. Yeah, drow sunlight sensitivity and give them a vulnerability to radiant damage. Bam, you're done. And then the whole thing with the Shadow Fae and Changelings was this idea that they felt so terrible about the fact that there will be mortals who'd be really good at something, and then eventually they're going to die because they're mortals, and that's just not right.
It's in the name.
It's in the name, yeah. And so they would take mortals and turn them into changelings because that way their skills can be preserved forever. And the analogy that they used in Van Rosh's Guide to Shadow Fae was this, like, pressing flowers. That, like, yeah, you pluck the flower, and yeah, it does technically kill the flower to pluck it. You know, that I guess that's a problem. But then, you know, you press it, and its beauty is preserved forever.
So awesome.
It's so great. So if you wanted to bring that element in, you could have this idea of if your PCs are doing really well and they're just super acing all of the social interactions, and just all of your, like, cozy fantasy social interaction stuff is too easy for them, you could have a Fae who's just, like, eyeing them, being like, oh, I want to have the perfect bathhouse attendant for all eternity. Like, it's
this
terrible.
This is a great twist to Spring if they're like, all right, my job is to do a good job. Why are my coworkers there's a couple insight checks to be like, wow, your coworker keeps dropping stuff and failing, and then like, wait, they're doing this on purpose. Why is that particular customer I've been doing so well with having a meeting with Yubaba about my contract?
Yes! Oh my gosh, yes. Like, even if you don't want to have this be a thing with, like, all Fae, if you don't want to bring this in for everything in your Spirited Away game, just having this one changeling happy Fae who comes in, and, like, everyone knows to do a subpar job with them except the PCs could be so great.
Like, and this is even a nice in terms of the Wonderful wonderful fairy tale, like Fey court logic of the whole, like, normally you're okay because you're under contract. But they could buy out your contract.
Yes.
They could go to Yubaba and offer to buy out your contract. And that could be a very fun scene.
And for enough gold, Yubaba will absolutely
sell your contract to them.
And then, with the whole environmental destruction theme that's such a big part of both the movie and especially our interpretation of it, there are domains where you can bring that element in if you want to have, like, little Easter eggs or some of the other domains. We've previously mentioned Gnosis, which is the Captain Planet villain domain. So if you wanted to have it be that Haku was, like, a river in Gnosis.
But Malice Scalaris' dad, he loved it too much. So he had it filled with toxic waste.
Yes.
He invented toxic waste just to dump in this river.
OG Falcovnia also had a lot of environmental exploitation because they were trying to be the humanity is the real monster domain in every possible way. If you're bringing in some of the current stuff, you could do some great stuff with some of the spirits being displaced spirits from Hazland.
It's so good,
Or Lemuria.
I think especially Hazland. Because you have this idea of, like, the mist is eating the country. Especially if you had a, like, OG player knew a lot, let's call them Rachel, in your... in your party, and, like, the reveal that the Haku analog was, like, a specific mountain or a specific river that isn't on the map of Hazland anymore. Right, look, you just heard that noise.
I want to make out with you right now.
But, like, Hazland especially even gives you, like, you have an old map, you have a new map, and you can look at the old map and be like, what isn't there anymore? And if that particular forest or river or mountain had protective spirits, then they're just kind of kicking up their heels, trying to figure out what to do with their lives. Now that their mountain is gone.
Yeah. You actually you could also do that with Darkon, because the idea of the mists are eating Darkon now. If you are doing 5e Darkon, then compare the new map of Darkon to the old map of Darkon. And then, speaking of Let's Make Out
Speaking of things
now,
Rachel really likes to incorporate in her Ravenloft games.
This was your idea, so I'm handing this over to you for a minute, because I don't want to... When you come up with a...
Okay.
Yeah, incorporating the older material.
This is also, especially if you're going to play into the body horror stuff, we mentioned as a potential thing. And the idea, just to circle back to Changeling the Lost, that your body is taken, and as you work... your body is mutated to match the work. So the Kamaji, like...
Yeah.
If everybody is Kamaji. If Kamaji started as, like, a human and everybody's Kamaji.
Yeah. Or maybe the idea that the frog started as a human, but that his job was something to do with going into the water and, do something with that.
Then this brings in some of that stuff in Carnival. In Carnival that, like, you would sort of manifest your sins and your innermost self. And... this is nice because it lets you get that kind of classic, gothic, or even like fairy tale. Like your outer self expressing your inner self. Your body becoming a reflection of your soul. But not as problematic as Carnival, potentially, because, Carnival is trying to evoke real-life carnivals and freak shows. So some of the thing... and some of them are like, she's a snake lady, or he's got magic tattoos.
She's got tentacles for
some
hands.
Are like... it's a bearded woman. Like, some are real-life physical differences.
One of them...
because they're trying to evoke those real-life freak shows.
Yeah, one of them is the Fat Man.
Yeah.
And it's... oh, gosh. He's so bad.
He likes pie so much.
It's like he's super lazy, and every time he makes other people do things for him, he gains weight. It's so bad. So, like, since this isn't attaching a moral quantity to it, it's just related to your work.
Right.
Then you can bring in some of that Carnival stuff without having it be your sin is manifesting as a disability.
Yes.
Or a different kind of body.
Yes. That this is known. And you can all get that, like, fundamental nightmare of, like, I am, reaching up to the tall shelf so much my arms are stretching.
Yeah.
That kind of Lamarckian evolution of labor.
Yeah.
And then you also have, what the wonderful thing with it, we keep going at this thing, Spirit, because it's so helpful for us, is that you even have the potential of purification. That, like, if you can free someone from their contract, if you can lift the sort of burden of this labor from them, they can be restored to their original form. And so that's the great thing, is it's not even a, like, permanent, locked in, I'm running the boiler so I have crazy spider arms coming out of my back. It's like, no, if Kamaji was freed from his contract, or if he got on the train and left, his original body would be restored.
He turned into a real boy.
Yeah, he turned into a real boy. That's great.
Yeah. And then the last thing, we just have spontaneous purification.
Yes, Rachel just wrote that right here.
This was a thing where we because this is live, baby.
Live,
where
baby.
we kind of paused
Seconds ago, yes.
and I scrolled down and put it in. This was when we were talking about kind of the idea of purifying stink spirits and knowing a stink spirit who got corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be kind of if you wanted, either you wanted to do Spirited Away as kind of a spooky infused Feywild game rather than a Ravenloft game, or if you wanted it to be kind of the transition out of Ravenloft, because this would be such an I win button for certain aspects of Ravenloft. But we've talked about in previous episodes the whole idea that the Yesterhill druids in Curse of Strahd are calling on some stuff from the previous editions, where the idea was that, like, nature spirits and whatnot would get corrupted by being in Ravenloft. That, like, if you're a treant in Ravenloft, your roots are buried in Barovia. Strahd is the land, so your roots are buried in Strahd. You are drinking up the water from Strahd. You are drinking up Strahd's sunlight when it happens. Eventually, that's going to infect you. If you're a dryad, that's going to infect you. There was a whole thing on Ravenloft, I think we mentioned in the last unicorn episode, that there was this idea of shadow unicorns that, like, would be these kind of corrupted shadow unicorn nature spirits. And if you wanted to do kind of like this very, like, uplifting button at the end of your Ravenloft campaign of some of these corrupted Ravenloft nature spirits come to Yubaba's bathhouse, and you can cleanse them and send them home.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that would be...
You could turn the dark unicorn into a regular unicorn.
Yeah.
You can turn the blood-drinking treant into a regular treant. Yeah, that's cool stuff.
Yeah. If you're coming here just for horror, then this isn't the thing for you. But if you like a little break from the horror now and then, and you like having nice things,
which, like, I hope you clicked on Spirited Away. You're like, this isn't going to be like grim, dark, miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, it would suck of us to do that.
It would. So if you clicked on Spirited Away because you like to have nice things, here's a way to have nice things.
So the last nice thing we like to do in the episode is to talk about the strengths and challenges of running an adventure in this domain. Strengths is great.
Spirited Away.
It's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah.
It's an anime that won an Oscar. And it is a very popular movie, so you have this wonderful, like, I feel like your average Dungeons and Dragons nerd. There's a good chance they've seen Spirited Away.
Oh, yeah.
And that gives you such a great basis to draw on. And the wonderful thing is, because Spirited Away is such a perfect fairy tale movie, like, it gives you not only, like, a specific setting and specific NPCs, but saying we're doing a Spirited Away domain, we're doing a Spirited Away adventure, immediately keys everyone onto this, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
We're doing a dark fairy tale.
It gives everyone the mood, it gives everyone the vibes.
It gives everyone the kind of, to quote Planet Arcade, this sort of physics of the world.
Yeah. Like, especially if you say we're doing Spirited Aways or Ravenloft domain, they get, okay, these are the physics, they're going to be darker.
Right, yeah. So even stuff like we were saying, with the whole, like, there's this food, you don't have permission to eat it, do you want to eat it? If, like, people get it Spirited Away, they're like, oh, heck no, we don't want to, like, we get what we're doing here.
Mama didn't raise no fools.
Or, like, they're not going to be like, what the heck are you doing? If you're like, you sign the contract and she takes your name away. That is, they're going to be like, yeah, no, we get it. That's how this world works. It's a wonderful, like, it's such a great fairy tale logic, fairy tale dreamlike world. This is a fantastic way to do a kind of dark fairy tale adventure, especially if you've got your witch hunter and you're this and you're that Ravenloft party, and you're like, I really want to do a dark fairy tale world.
Yeah.
Especially since Tempest has shifted more to be full car in 5e, this could kind of fill that niche of this is the dark fairy tale niche. And this could be a great way to transition from Witchlight to Curse of Strahd, if that's what you wanted to do. If you wanted to make your Witchlight party and kind of do you're doing fairy tale, and then gear shift into dark fairy tale, then gear shift into Ravenloft. If you, as we've said that term a couple times already, cozy fantasy, this is also a wonderful way to do a little, like, cozy fantasy side story. Like, it does not need to build your whole campaign around running a coffee shop. But if you're like, I think my players would think it was fun for like a couple of sessions to be being bathhouse at workers, just doing this sort of domestic drama.
I was just laughing because it was like, if you ran our WandaVision setting, and your players are like, but I wish this was for real.
Yeah,
though.
I just want this to be the game, yeah.
Then this is the domain for you.
And the wonderful thing is, once again, bringing in that spirited away element. It's like, yes, it's a cozy fantasy. Yes, you're doing a lot of domestic drama. You're like rolling to do a good job at your job. You're rolling to have your coworker like you.
Yeah.
But it also has those like dark fairy tale, more horror-y elements. So it's not pure cozy fantasy. There's like an edge to this setup that I think is going to be super like easy to trick. Like, I want my Ravenloft group to have their kind of cozy fantasy like weekend. Then this could be that, and then you get out, and then you're back in a Ravenloft, and it hasn't been too tonally jarring.
Yes.
But Rachel, what about some of the challenges?
Well, as we've mentioned a couple times, this is really not a very D&D.
It sure is. There are other Ghibli movies like Nausicaa that are much more D&D-able.
Like Nausicaa, like Princess Mononoke, which you should go back to and listen. That was our April episode this year. But just, problems are not solved with murder.
Yes.
Or with disarming traps.
Yes. What other buttons do you have?
Or with solving riddles. That's the other button.
Yes.
So you have to kind of creatively stretch in order to give the players problems to solve with the D&D toolbox. And I think we actually, like, this was the thing that we put into the write-up that I don't think that we actually mentioned in the episode anywhere, so I'm going to go ahead and put it there. Here. That, like, you can stretch with the jobs that Yubaba gives the PC. That you can say, okay, the fighter gets to be the bouncer.
Right. It's kind of a stink spear type thing.
Yes. The druid gets to be a gardener. Like the, what were some of the other ones we had?
It's going to be a whole bunch in the write-up, as Rachel mentioned. You know, the bard, easy, you're playing music.
Yes.
And the monk, you know, could be like... You're doing massage. Yes. You're using your spirit / key points to do shiatsu massage. Yes.
Your ranger is doing animal handling and taking care of the pigs.
Right.
Like, you can do all of that. You can bring in all of the character traits that your players put so much thought into and that are such a big part of their PCs, like feeling competent. But again, you have to put the work in. Like, you have to think about, like, how do I use this character's skill set in a bathhouse?
Either you or your monk PC has to be like, can I use my spirit points to do massage?
Yes.
To be, like, the best masseuse.
Yes.
In the bathhouse.
And if you or your players are like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to figure out how to use monk powers to be an amazing masseuse.
Yes.
This is the setting for you,
Absolutely,
but that is not every group.
If your wizard is like, here are all these spells and all these arcana things to, like, help fix the boiler.
Yes.
And make it run right.
Yes. Or, like, to find the proper alchemical mixes to make new bath salt blends. Yeah. Like, if you are all
if you're
over,
like, this is alcohol, hearing this.
Yes. But not everyone is. If you're like... Can I just cast Magic Missile?
Right, yeah. Like, what a fireball? Fireball?
Fireball?
Fireball? Most of the buttons on your character sheet are about how to win fights.
Yes.
And if you immediately, we made that joke about fireball, and you were like, well, actually, like, fire stuff could be used for, like, heating up bath. I could have the whole thing without it. This is the setting for you. And if you were like, yeah, when do I get to cast fireball? And this is the setting for you. And, you know, both of those are valid ways to play Dungeons & Dragons.
That is absolutely okay. But if you are the when do I get to cast fireball, weaknesses setting is
Spirited Away, not for you.
Speaking of which, it's not really horror.
Yes.
Like, there are horror elements, absolutely, that we've talked about.
As we traumatizing children with pigs.
Pigs, no face, stealing your name, all
Good
of that
stuff all around.
But it's not primarily horror. It's a very gentle story where everyone is basically a good person. And even Yubaba, like, we didn't give her the baby in this setting because we couldn't figure out what to do with him. But even Yubaba has, like, someone she, like, absolutely and truly loves who means something to her.
Or she kind of comes around, like, in the beginning, she's like a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end, she's sort of just like your curmudgeonly but kind, like, granny.
Yeah. Chihiro calls her granny, and we're not like, what? How dare you call her granny? So we talked about, you know, in the first part of the weaknesses, we talked about what if your PCs are very, like, D&D, combat. This is if your PCs are very Spirited Away.
Yeah.
I love Spirited Away. It's my favorite movie. I love how gentle it is. Like, they're not gonna like it being turned into a Ravenloft setting with horror and with Zeniba being an awful person.
This is legitimately something that, like, is a stressor for both of us in this episode. Is the, like, how do we do justice to this setting with the assignment of making it a Ravenloft domain and not ruin the story?
Yes, absolutely.
And not have it be the boilers powered by skulls.
Yes. But if the idea of a horror-based cozy fantasy that's not WandaVision sounds great to you, this is your domain.
You found the right podcast, and this is the domain for you. And if this is the perfect setting for them, how can they tell us?
Well, you can email us at wonderfulworldofdarklords@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, or Patreon at Wonderful World of Darklords. And on YouTube, I believe we're just Wonderful World of Darklord. And our YouTube comments are a hopping place.
Yeah. Which got an excellent suggestion of Kung Fu Panda as a,
which is a
great. We didn't think of Kung Fu Panda, and that is a fantastic idea for a domain. 1 and 2. We've only seen 1 and 2, but either of those works great.
Yes.
And
Gary Oldman or I just blanked on your boyfriend's name.
My boyfriend Ian McShane.
All I could think was Ian McNeice, and I'm like, no, that is not Tom's boyfriend.
No, he seems nice. He seems fun.
He's a nice guy.
But, like, he's no Ian McShane.
He's no Ian McShane.
Of all the Ians out there, all the British Ians, I know who my favorite is. So if you like our very careful, kind of trying to be delicate, adapting Spirited Away into a Ravenloft domain, and you're like, I like this and I want more adapted stuff, then I have a couple horror movies adapted into one-shots. If you go more by this author on the DM's Guild write-up, if you search for Tom Kohler, you'll find them. And if you like our consideration for your cool children that like Spirited Away running this adventure, then we also have some resources for running spooky or horror-themed adventure for children.
One of which was recently featured on the N-World, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes, Strahd Gives Me Goosebumps was recently featured on the N-World.
That's us, if you saw the thread.
Yes.
And if, speaking of spookier, more horror-y, Halloween-y themed stuff for children, over to you, Rachel.
I have a picture book, Mother Ghost, Nursery Rhymes for Little Monsters. It's exactly what it sounds like. 13 classic nursery rhymes were written to be about Halloween. Halloween is over, but you can probably find it on clearance now, so go for it.
I bet you know kids that it's not over in their hearts.
Yeah. And then if you go to my website, www.rachelkohler.com, I have several short stories for adults, many of which there are links there to get to them for free. I believe the only one I have with fairies so far is 99 Cent Dreams.
It's a good one.
But 99 Cent Dreams is pretty much what it sounds like based on the title, so go for it. Also, real quick, speaking of next time, if you hear what Dee says, and you're like, Jigga what? That doesn't sound like a Disney movie. Both the Muppets and Mickey have done it. So yes, it is a Disney movie.
Multiple iterations of this on Disney+. Put it on Disney+, search it, see what we think.
'Tis the season, and we're doing it.
Until next time, thank you for listening, and happy gaming.
Parting thoughts. When I attempted to visit Zeniba's home in Swamp Bottom before leaving, I was rebuffed by thousands of paper birds with razor-sharp wings. It seems that Yubaba's sister shares her animosity toward humans, but is under no obligation to welcome them. Perhaps the borders of my next destination are closed, or perhaps the avarice of the bathhouse is having a final say in my life, for the mists have deposited me at a counting house in what appears to be Londinium, called Scrooge and Marley. I will spend the night at an inn here before continuing on my journey so that the borders will have time to open. Whether because I remembered my name or because I left Yubaba's employment, my hand is returning to normal. Had my body been permanently altered by a witch, I can assure you that I would not have nearly this level of composure. I cannot describe the relief I feel at having earned my name from her, for it is clear that she would never have given it or anything else without a cost. She is a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Yubaba, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. In this spirit, while I shall return to my usual moniker in my next report, I cannot bring myself to use it in this one. Having regained my full name, I find that I have no desire to cut it short tonight, for every part of it is precious to me. Regards, Danielle Denny.
The minds of the fair are often indecipherable, and many mortals mistake them for forces of chaos. Yet they are governed by their own, rather unique, laws. A powerful fae of nature, for example, is compelled to protect the lesser fae of their realm. Furthermore, even those that exhibit outward disdain toward mortals have the tendency to emulate them. Greed is, after all, a solely mortal folly, and my servant has just witnessed a fae realm thoroughly influenced by such selfish desires. There is power in names, as you, Danielle, Denis, know more than others. When a true name of a person, or even an object, is freely given, or spoken, and spoken correctly, one can completely dominate the bearer of that name. The method Yubaba utilizes to enact such control is intriguing, though one could achieve the same results with a simple modify memory spell, without the need for such theatrics. However, the resulting transmutations upon the subject that my devoted servant experienced firsthand, though not unique, is worth close examination. Rest assured, your continued loyalty is thoroughly appreciated, and why my little scholar is more than fairly compensated for her diligent research. If in the future she should find herself with a seemingly permanent disfigurement, she will find there is little in the way of magic that I cannot reverse.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.
So what brought you your PC? So what brought your pet?
Your Pisces.
Your Pisces. It's a water sign going through a time of transition. So what brought your PCs to the bathhouse of the spirit?
I mean, it's a bathhouse, so a water sign. It's
Yes,
like,
yes.
What else would you do? Okay, sorry.
Okay, you're good?
Yes.